And really here in Chicago that are constructed like this. But I now want you to imagine cities on the East Coast. Cities such as Philadelphia, Boston, New York City. They're all constructed in this similar style. That's because they're a little bit of older cities and have less space. So as we float on by these four buildings, I want you to think with your social scientist hats. How do these buildings make you feel? What are they telling you about society? To me, they create a sense of crowding, high-paced energy, a hustle and bustle. Kind of like the feelings you get on cities on the East Coast. But let's compare that to the skyline in front of us. You can see the skyline through the buildings. The buildings can breathe. You can breathe. This has a psychological and a cultural effect on us, a calming effect. This is all to say that architecture matters. Not only do we impact the buildings throughout each generation, but the buildings are also impacting us in our way of life. I like to say Chicago feels like a more manageable New York City. You have everything you need in a big city like New York. However, there's a little bit of a slower pace here, more of a Midwestern value. And that's why I do love Chicago so much. Coming up on the left-hand side, just past the Wrigley building, is just about to come into our frame now, is my absolute favorite building. If you're looking for the one with the Gothic trimming on the top and the bottom, and that flagpole on top just sneaking into our view.
Oh, yeah.
That's the Chicago Tribune. It's in the French Gothic Revivalism style. It's modeled after a cathedral in Normandy, France. And it's a landmark building, meaning it's a permanent fixture in our skyline. This building's not going anywhere. It's going through a painstaking restoration process, and they're renovating the inside. They're almost finished with it, and turning it, reconstructing it into residence, which I think would be a pretty cool place to live. And clearly, so do some other people. Those are on the market for around $8 million. Now, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be going down to Navy Pier to catch some beautiful views of our skyline, and then heading back to dock. But when we do head back to dock, I recommend when you're back on shore, taking a closer look at this building. It in fact has different monument artifacts from monuments, cathedrals, historic events and places all over the world, imported and ingrained into the building, and they're going to tell you where each one of them is from. I discover a new kind of artifact every single day when I pass it. It's absolutely worth taking a closer look at. Now the building right behind it, which looks like it has that kind of like yellow onion or dome on top of it, that's the Intercontinental Hotel. It's another landmark. And that's actually supposed to resemble a mosque. That building has different nods to religions built into it. Really fascinating. New York City or watch 30 Rock, this building might look familiar to you. That's because the front face of it is mimicking New York City's 30 Rockefeller Plaza. That building in New York was constructed in the late part of the 1920s in the Art Deco style, giving this building the style name of Echo Deco, right? Because it's copying it. I get a kick out of that name. Sticking on the left, just before the University of Chicago Center, in the distance, we're going to get a really quick glimpse of the Hancock Tower. You're going to be looking for the black trapezoid building with a crisscross exoskeleton and the two antennas on top. This building right here, it's the pinnacle, the peak of black box modernism, the father of that genre. It's also the fourth tallest building here in Chicago. Chicago locals like to recommend visiting the Sears Willis Tower by day and the Hancock Tower at night for the best views of the city. They have a really nice 360-degree sky deck up there. We can get a pretty priced cocktail, but also see some absolutely fabulous views of our city. So it could be something fun to check out later this evening. We're going to move over to the right-hand side to see two of our newer buildings here in Chicago, both residents, constructed by the wonderful Genie Gang. The first building you're going to be looking for is in the second row, just behind the James Hardy building. You're going to begin to see this building with these white wavy panels on the front of it. Those in fact aren't panels, they're balconies. And each one of those balconies are geometrically unique, meaning no two balconies are the same. And there's three real purposes for that. The first being it creates what looks like an optical illusion of a wave cascading down the front face of the building, giving the building its name of Aqua Towers. The second purpose is because each one of those balconies are geometrically unique. It cuts the wind, allowing the residents to stay onto their balconies into the colder months here in Chicago. And the third aspect is for community reason. Right there at the top of your balcony, you can have a conversation with your upstairs and your downstairs neighbors. So tiny people having really big conversations up there, that's Genie Gang. We're rather proud of her here in Chicago. She's a Chicago local, a Harvard graduate, and a genius. Now that is not just my opinion. She in fact is a certified genius. In 2011, she won the Genius MacArthur Grant Award for her interdisciplinary style of architecture. She takes into effect the community, the individual, and the environment. So let's take a look at her most famous design here in Chicago, coming up on the right-hand side. This rather tall, wavy-looking building. I like to call this building the Dr. Seuss building because it looks like it came out of a storybook. But it's officially known as the St. Regis. It is the third tallest building here in Chicago and the tallest building in the world, designed by a female-led architectural group, Gang Studios, the head of that being that wonderful Jeannie Gang. We're going to be putting on our engineering hats one final time today to better understand how this building stays standing in the Windy City. I want you to look 84 floors from the bottom and 17 floors from the top. What you're going to see up there is 2 open-air floors. That's not a flaw of the building, it's a structural design known as the blow-through floors, and they do exactly what you would think. Instead of the building taking the brunt of the wind just blows right on through those 2 floors and stabilizes the building. So that's how this building stays standing in the Windy City. This is also one of our newer and more expensive residents here in Chicago. It only finished construction in 2020, and literally about 5 days ago, a top penthouse just sold for a little bit over $20 million. However, there's about 361 units within this building, and they've only been able to sell 248 so far. So that speaks a little bit to the high-end real estate market, not doing quite as well as they would like. But that Jeannie Gang, she's so cool. And she recently just beat out all the other architects and will be leading the remodel of the O'Hare Airport in 2023. So we're looking forward to that. I recently was just reading through those design plans and they look phenomenal. She has a lot of great ideas to engage the community around the O'Hare Airport, creating a lot of jobs. And also there's a lot of nods to the history of Chicago built into the design of that building. So we're really looking forward to that. Coming up on the left is a building that's either going to look like a fidget spinner or a flask to you. That's all dependent on your age. That's known as Lake Point Towers, and it's the furthest building out on our lakefront. That's because there's zoning laws here in Chicago to keep our lakefront clear and open. The idea is they don't want a bunch of tall commercial buildings blocking our gorgeous views of that lake and that wonderful public space. However, these tricky architects in fact found a loophole in those zoning laws and were able to construct their building this far out. Now those loopholes have been closed since, so you're not going to see any more buildings this far out on our lakefront today. And thank goodness for those zoning laws that came in the mid-1900s. They were highly contested. People really wanted to commercialize that lakefront. Without those zoning laws, we wouldn't have access to some of the most spectacular views we get here in Chicago, and some of that wonderful public space that we truly do value, such as the lakefront. That is 24 miles of lakefront and 17 miles of trail. You can pick that lakefront trail up right here from Navy Pier, which is only about a 0.7-mile walk from where we're going to be back at dock. You're going to take straight down Illinois Street. And you can take that lakefront trail down south. And you can pass by all of our different wonderful parks, such as Millennial Park, Grant Park, Jackson Park. Check out the Bean, Buckingham Fountain, and go all the way to the campus of our museums. Or you can take that lakefront trail up north and pass by all of our different wonderful public swimming beaches, such as Ohio Street Beach, Monroe Beach, Fullerton Beach. Go all the way up to the Lincoln Park Zoo, which is free and open to the public with beautiful botanical gardens. So there's endless activities on that lakefront trail. I always urge and recommend passengers to at least, on a beautiful day like today, at least just take a nice stroll on that lakefront trail, city and a beautiful view of the lake. Speaking of perspectives of this city, what we're going to be doing in just about a moment here is we're going to be making a U-turn and getting horizontal in front of this